Alrighty, everyone. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Maddie Wagner. I am the digital marketing specialist here at Johnson Consulting Group. Just as a friendly reminder, please type your questions into the Q&A area during the discussion. We will answer questions at the end of the session. So once again, we're utilizing that Q&A area for questions, and we have allotted time at the end of the session to answer those. And with that, Lacy, take it away.
Thank you, Maddie. Welcome, everyone, to today's Johnson Consulting Conversation with Derrick Husmann, an accomplished funeral service professional and senior business consultant for Johnson Consulting Group. He is also a dedicated member of the Disaster Mortuary Operational Response Team. And we're going to dive into his professional experience with DMORT. We're also going to talk about Derrick's journey in funeral service, which is inspiring as it is unique. We're going to talk about also his recent deployment to Asheville, North Carolina, and the intricacies of his role and the profound impact of his work. Without further ado, let's welcome Derrick. Hi, Derrick.
Hey, Lacy. Thanks for having me today.
Well, thank you for being here with us. And I want us to start with the understanding of your roots in funeral service and your journey. What inspired you to pursue a career in funeral service?
Well, my journey was probably not like many. I did not have the calling initially to go into funeral service. I was considering a career path of broadcasting or forensics. And obviously those are pretty far apart. So I sat down with a good friend of mine, a mentor or big brother to me growing up. And he had a degree in mass communications and did broadcasting and explained to me what the ins and outs were of that industry. Talked to him about forensics, and at this time of his career, he's actually a funeral director. And so he starts to encourage me to go into funeral directing and potentially become a trade embalmer to continue my goal of getting into forensics. So I took him up on it, and I applied to Southern Illinois University Mortuary Science program, and started to attend classes there and worked at a funeral home where I was fortunate to work also with a forensic pathologist who would travel and do autopsies. So I was assisting him and learning the ins and outs of the forensic side. But I kept getting drawn back to the families and the funeral directing side. So my career path went down the funeral directing path instead of continuing on with forensics.
It's fascinating how your journey took a unique turn from broadcasting to forensics and now mortuary science. And it's clear that Joe's advice played a significant role in guiding you. And it is inspiring to see how you discovered a passion for helping families and found a path that combines all of your interests and skills. And now that we know a little bit about what drew you to funeral service, I want us to broaden up our scope just a bit. If you could tell our audience a little bit more about DMORT.
Sure. Well, DMORT is a federal mortuary response team. It's made up of forensic and mortuary specialists. And it's currently under the Department of Health and Human Services. It's bounced around from Homeland Security to Health and Human Services to FEMA to it seems like nobody wants us, but somebody ends up having to take us at some point. Um, we also operate under the National Disaster Medical System, so that gives us some protections as well. Um, there are 10 DMORT teams across the United States, and when a mass fatality event occurs that exceeds local or state resources, a federal response can be activated, and then our resources can be brought in. Currently, DMORT has 3 DPMUs, or disaster portable morgue units, and they're staged at 3 different areas across the country for rapid deployment. Um, and they're equipped with everything that we would need for a full forensic examination, including portable X-ray machines, and then all the subject matter expert individuals that come along with it. Um, Depending on the nature of the event, a team will be selected to deploy with the forensic specialist to facilitate those morgue operations. So we come in and set up temporary morgue, and process all of the decedents that come through. They also have a VIC team, which is a victim identification team, and they will help assist with antemortem data collection. So if you think of missing persons reports that come in, they will interview all the family members, try to get as much information as they can so we can cross-reference that data with the antemortem data from the examination or from the postmortem examination. They can also assist in the collection of DNA at that site, which may provide crucial to identification. Um, a DMAT team is also typically deployed with us, and that is going to be a disaster medical assistance team. And they typically have a physician, a nurse, and a paramedic who will help if any of us get injured or sick during a deployment. Because as you can imagine, local resources are already stretched pretty thin. So we do have our own little medical assistance team. And then as far as deployments, they're typically 14 days is our typical cycle. They can be extended, and you can get redeployed just depending on the nature of the disaster.
That was a great overview, Derrick. Thank you. And it's really impressive how DMORT teams are equipped and ready to handle such critical situations, certainly with comprehensive resources and specialized expertise, and the ability to provide support to surviving families really shows a deep level of care and professionalism. I'm curious to know more about your personal journey and how you became involved with DMORT.
Yeah, so I became involved with DMORT after volunteering through the National Funeral Directors Association at the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner for 9/11. It's there where I met several members of DMORT. I didn't even know DMORT existed at the time. I was very early on in my career, but they encouraged me to make an application to potentially become part of a team, which I was fortunate enough to get through the process. There's an extensive background check and security clearances that you have to get through. I believe the entire process took about a year to get through everything. It may be quicker now, I'm not sure, but this was just post 9/11, so there were a lot more security measures put into place at that time.
It does sound like it is a deeply rewarding and important journey that you've been on, and totally worth the process of a year-long training experience for you. Assuming that there are very specific qualifications that are required, could you speak a little bit more about the training or certifications that are specific to your role with DMORT?
Sure. So depending on a team member's specialty, that could have some variations in there. But as a mortuary officer, I need to be a licensed funeral director and embalmer and in good standing with my state organization or professional regulations. Um, and then we do have trainings that are required. Some are annually, some are every several years. And they would consist of harassment prevention, bloodborne pathogens, respiratory protection, psychological first aid, and probably the one that I hate taking the most is the HHS travel card training. And that's on credit card use when you deploy, because there's a lot of little different rules and then doing the reporting afterwards. But those are just the online trainings. In addition, the teams will have training sessions, but they're self-funded typically. So team members will travel from all over. I belong to the Great Lakes region. I believe I'm probably one of the furthest south. as far as our team goes. And a lot of trainings are held up in Wisconsin and Michigan and, different areas. So there's some travel that you do incur. But it's well worth the trip. We do have a training coming up this year in Michigan. It's cold weather training or severe weather training. So if you don't like cold, it's not going to be your cup of tea. Um, we've also done trainings in the past for weapons of mass destruction, joint task force training, uh, aircraft accidents, weather-related events, earthquakes. And then we were fortunate to be able to do some training at the University of Tennessee through the Forensic Anthropology Department, also known as the Body Farm. So we did we've done a lot of training, and it's really important for all the team members to stay active and ready to respond when you need to.
Well, someone that specializes in training, I can certainly appreciate the comprehensive set of requirements and training to ensure the preparedness for various scenarios. And looking specifically at your role, I'm interested, and I'm sure our audience is too, in the day-to-day tasks that come with your deployment.
Okay, so there's a lot that can happen with a deployment. Every deployment is different, so you have to be very, very flexible. So once a disaster occurs, DMORT leadership would roster a deployment team, and that's going to be based on the needs of that disaster, right? Um, Once you're rostered, you would be activated and you'd receive your deployment orders, and then you would respond accordingly. Typically, it's going to be to your local airport, and then you would respond to a staging area. From the staging area, we would find out what mission that we have and where we're going to be located and tasked to perform that mission. Um, the positions themselves, you can have all different types of job duties, right? So one day you could be doing tracking, and the next day you could be doing trailer management. And I know we'll potentially get into some of that as we work through this interview, but everyone there does it with complete professionalism, and it's just to serve the mission. So no job is menial. Every task is important, and the goal is still the same, and that's to get the families their loved ones back as quickly as possible. Um, we typically work 12-hour shifts. That is our standard shifts. Um, I can assure you that was not the case in Asheville. We did put in quite a few more hours in an effort to get things completed and accomplished. But a typical day would start with a briefing in the morning, typically at 7 o'clock. And then we would end the day with a briefing as well. Either that was to wrap up what we had completed during that day, or it's going to be a briefing for the next shift coming in, provided that you were working 24 hours. So you want to make sure that the next crew has all of the necessary information for them to be able to respond and take care of, the tasks that need to be done. Um, so I mentioned trailer management a little bit ago, decedent tracking, forensic examinations conducted as part of morgue operations, data entry into the VIP system. These are all some of the areas that individuals may be responsible to man. When you have subject matter experts like forensic pathologist or forensic odontologist or anthropologist, obviously they would be at their respective stations. The funeral directors or mortuary officers have typically been called the Swiss Army knife of the DMORT team, and it's because they're very flexible. They can do a lot of different aspects and can float in between those. Um, so once a victim has been identified, that would trigger a couple other things that take place. So the medical examiner or coroner must sign off that the individual is authorized for release. And then notification would be made to the funeral home of the family's choice, and then the release would take place. a lot of times funeral directors or medical legal investigators would help facilitate those areas. Um, as far as billeting or lodging, that's going to depend on the disaster. Teams you may find yourself in a hotel, or you may be sleeping in a tent with 30 other people. It just depends on what resources are available. I did not bring a sleeping bag to Asheville, but I did make a stop at Walmart and pick one up. So I needed it, and it was donated afterwards. So you definitely try to prepare and have your go bag ready for whatever conditions that you're going to be faced. But for some reason, I neglected to bring my sleeping bag. So as far as meals go, that again is going to depend on the disaster. You could be eating something from a local volunteer organization. I know in Asheville, it was Mercy Meals. They provided the meals for us, 2 meals a day. And then the location that I was at, we actually had the ability to grab some snacks and breakfast food and coffee and things. We refer to them as foamies because they're in a foam container. So you get pretty fond of foamies. A lot of rice and chicken, but you're just happy to have some things to eat. It could be a local restaurant. There, depending on the disaster itself, there could be places to eat, or you could be eating MREs, 3 meals a day. So again, it just really depends on the disaster and what's available.
Mercy Chefs is a great organization. I've had the opportunity to volunteer with them in the kitchen when Eastern Kentucky had devastating floods, and that chicken and rice is pretty good. They do a great job. It is incredible teamwork that is taking place behind the scenes, and I recommend to anyone that's looking for a maybe short-term volunteer opportunity to look into Mercy Chefs. I think it's mercychefs.org, but a great organization. You can check out where they're deployed at and where some of their stationary kitchens are in the United States. But I'm glad you mentioned them, and I can only imagine the impact that they had on the residents of Asheville along with yourself. And I want to continue on with our conversation about Asheville, North Carolina. And I want you to share a little bit more beyond the sleeping bag and Mercy Chefs about your experience and your responsibilities in Asheville, North Carolina, which was absolutely devastating to see on TV, such a beautiful part of our country.
Yeah, so as far as my role and what took place in Asheville, I'm sorry, that was the specific question. Right? I was still on Mercy Mercy Meals. I was having flashbacks.
Of chicken and rice
Yes.
in your foamies, thinking about some of more responsibilities that you had in Asheville.
Okay, so yeah, Asheville was a unique deployment. Um, Initially, we staged in Charlotte, and a small strike team was assembled to do some recon in Asheville to see what needs and resources were there. I was selected to be a part of that, and then myself and our acting deputy commander remained behind while the rest of the team was still in Charlotte. We were able to get morgue operations set up to handle the potential of influx until the rest of our team was deployed to that actual site. I was actually able to do some other things that were not normally associated with a DMORT mission. I was able to go with the JTEC Special Forces and Black Hawk helicopter and work with them to identify potential areas to search, to see if there were any additional victims in those areas. That was unique. We unfortunately did not find any in the areas that we we had identified. It was very hard from the air, as you can imagine, with all the devastation and things that were going on. Um, Quite a bit of the experiences and the work that was done there uh, have to be commended to the local staff that was there, the local medical examiners. They did an amazing job considering the circumstances. So Asheville was kind of ground central. And so it's a county system over there, and there were 5 individuals that were medical examiners there, and they worked tirelessly, sleeping at the facilities, making sure that everything was taken care of. So our role was really to support them, to help them facilitate their needs, and to process as many individuals as we could. For them to get their loved ones back to their families. In addition, we did assist them with their normal calls. So not only did they have the disaster calls, they had their normal caseload that they were handling. So overall, just morgue operations was my primary responsibility and role. Um, so yeah, that's that was Asheville.
They're certainly blessed to have you in that operations role, and the resilience of the local community and the strength of the team among the diverse responders is very inspiring. And of course, the bonds that you formed down there in Asheville, and of course, ongoing connections that you may have with the medical examiners is certainly heartwarming. And truly reflect the impact and the importance of the work that DMORT does. So reflecting on your experiences in Asheville, I imagine that your training played a very crucial role with that. How did your training and your experience with DMORT prepare you for the deployment to Asheville?
So training is, as I mentioned earlier, it's vital to what we do. It doesn't replace experience, but it definitely provides the groundwork and the map to what to look for and what to do and how to respond and your behavior when you're there. Um, Previous deployments definitely helped understand the big picture. But again, every deployment is so unique, and just have to be so flexible to meet the needs of the local jurisdictions. Because, and I probably should have mentioned this earlier, DMORT doesn't come in and take over. We're really responding. We're really um, answering to the local jurisdictions. It's still their jurisdiction. We're there for support, and their guidance is what we base our response off of.
In providing that support and following their guidance, what do you believe to be the biggest impact on the local community of Asheville?
I would say the, the biggest impact that we as DMORT individuals or team members or professionals can have on any disaster is to um, provide identification for those deceased. Get them back to their families as quickly as possible so they can start with the grieving process, so they can start to have confirmation and hold services, whether that's funeral services or memorial services. That is our biggest contribution, is to be able to do that efficiently and effectively, and certainly making sure that it's accurate. That would be catastrophic if we did not have the protocols in place that we do to ensure that that individual is truly who we say they are.
I would think that the emotional demands of your work during a disaster is immense. How do you manage the emotional and psychological demands of your work during a deployment such as what you had in Asheville?
Um, well, that can actually be very, very stressful, to your point, or to your question. Uh, for the most part, I believe we all have the same mindset that this is a task that we need to do. This is the job that we have volunteered for, signed up for, trained for. And if we're not going to be the ones to do it, who would? So we need to make sure that we get those loved ones back to their families as quickly as possible. We do have mental health specialists that typically travel with us as well. Obviously, everyone there is to support each other, make sure that everybody is doing okay. So there is some security nets, I guess, in place, if you will, to make sure that we are coping and dealing with things. And that is another reason why we typically have a 12, 14-day deployment to where that you get away for a little bit and then regroup, and then you can potentially come back in. But there is a lot of stress involved, but everybody handles it, I think, pretty well from what I've seen so far with all of our team.
Your commitment to providing the compassion and the timely support is truly commendable. And I know that the focus is helping families heal. And that's something that is top of mind, but also balancing that with your emotions during that time as well and your physical needs. I want to talk a little bit about what it takes to be a part of DMORT, because the information you've shared with us from the beginning has certainly been invaluable, but there may be some people joining us today who are interested in being a part of DMORT. What skills do you believe are essential for someone working for disaster relief teams like DMORT?
So I believe the most important aspect that you can have, or most important skill set that you can have, is the commitment to be a part of such an organization, to be flexible, to provide that type of service, to be compassionate for the families. Your commitment level to serve them will be what either makes or breaks your deployment. If you're committed to the mission and accomplishing that, that's probably the most critical. Many people that are on this call today are probably either funeral directors or medical legal investigators, or even a combination thereof. So speaking to the crowd today, the funeral directing side of it is the easy part. It's what we do every day as professionals and serving those families. It's being able to commit to that mission despite how difficult the circumstances are. I would think that would be the most critical aspect of it.
In the real world of what's happening on site at these disaster cities that have taken place, you've mentioned in the past that it's 12 nights straight sleeping in a tent and sleeping on the ground. Are there any other realities that potential people who want to be involved with DMORT should take into consideration?
Cold showers.
Okay.
When you can get showers, there's a lot of physical and mental stresses that come with a deployment. Now, some are going to be easier than others, but you just have to be very resilient mentally and physically in good shape and strong. That would be, I think, critical to being able to deploy.
And I'd say being extremely flexible as circumstances evolve during that. And I know that people can go to usajobs.gov to learn more about DMORT and possibly joining and understanding the requirements and training that are ahead of them. I want to extend my deepest appreciation to you, Derrick, for sharing your journey with us today, and certainly the dedication to the field of funeral service and DMORT, and your unwavering commitment to help those in need and to step into these challenging environments to assist communities during their most vulnerable moments. It truly exemplifies the essence of service and compassion. So thank you, Derrick, for inspiring our audience with your story. And for those, again, interested in a path with DMORT, you can go to usajobs.gov to learn more about that. Thank you, Derrick. And I also want to thank our audience for joining us on this meaningful conversation. May we continue to be inspired to extend our hands and hearts in the service of others. On behalf of everyone at Johnson Consulting Group, we wish you and your families a wonderful holiday season. Your commitment to supporting grieving families with dedication and compassion during the holidays is inspiring. I am excited to announce that our next Johnson Consulting conversation will be held on January 22nd, 2025. And we are thrilled to be joined by Jill Lazar, Director of Business Development for Ring Ring Marketing. And I promise it's going to be an engaging and insightful discussion that you do not want to miss. And thank you again, Derrick, for joining us. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Lacy, and,
Yes.
and everyone for joining in today.
Oh, it looks like we got a question that just came in, guys.
Yep.
Well, everyone might be scattered about, but if you have a second, Derrick, I think maybe someone wanted to ask here. Well, first off, we did get a shout out to communication majors, mass communication, so whoop whoop there. But then on top of that, it looks like we got a question in the chat. Just because you live or are part of the Western region, for example, do you stay on the Western coast primarily, or would you fly all over the country?
So you would fly all over the country. I should have brought this up during the presentation, but in Asheville, we had individuals as far away as Alaska and California that had responded to the mission and were deployed.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And once again, thank you, everybody. Be on the do we have another question? Yeah, here we go. What is the starting pay for DMORT employees?
So employees are intermittent government employees, so you're only compensated when you are on a deployment. It is the GS scale, and depending on what your assignment is, for example, a mortuary officer, I believe that is a GS 12. I'm not sure on the other individuals. I never really paid attention to the compensation portion of it, but they do make you jump through some hoops to get started with DMORT, as I mentioned earlier, with the application process and then the openings that are available.
All right, another question. Are there any internship opportunities?
Not that I'm aware of. It's either that you're a part of it or that you're not. I'm not familiar with any internship opportunities.
All righty, and then here we got another question. Are you aware of any DMORT type group in Canada?
I'm not familiar with other organizations outside the United States. There could potentially be something up there. Has responded outside of the continental United States. They did respond to Haiti and several other areas, depending on what has taken place. I believe there's a deployment to Puerto Rico, kind of part of the United States, and then Guam, I think, before I was involved with DMORT. So there is some potential for deployments outside of the United States. Just going to depend on what resources are requested from the federal government.
Awesome, great answers. Any final questions here?
Those are great questions.
Yeah, keep them coming. Love the interaction. Looks like we have a Charles Stewart typing. Oh, maybe not. Well then, in final words, do we have any last final words here, Lacy? I guess be on the lookout for your blog. That's going to be coming out soon.
Definitely. We'll have a recap blog up on the Johnson Consulting site this week, probably less than 24 hours. I want to thank Derrick once again for being a part of December's Johnson Consulting Conversations, and stay on the lookout for the link for registration for our January Johnson Consulting Conversation with Jill Lazar of Ring Ring Marketing. And again, on behalf of everyone at Johnson Consulting Group, we wish you and your families a wonderful holiday season. And thank you, Maddie, for all your hard work behind the scenes.
Thank you very much, Lacy. All righty, guys. Well, then, as she said, happy holidays. Be on the lookout, and we will give you back the rest of your fabulous Wednesdays. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.